Good morning, third grade. How weird to be making a video for you. I've never done that before. I'm going to read you a little story, and you know how much I love stories. And I think I would like you to write a little bit about it when we're done. I'd like you to write your favorite part, and I'd like you to list at least 3 reasons why that was your favorite part. You know, in class we've been working on having opinions. We all have them, but we've been working on validating our opinions with specific ideas. Like if I said I like strawberry ice cream, it's not just because. I could tell you I like strawberry ice cream because I love strawberries. I actually love the way frozen milk and strawberries taste together, and I think it's really yummy. So those are 3 reasons, not just because. So those are the types of things I'm looking for. When you have an opinion, you need to be able to validate your opinion with reasons. And that's kind of what we've been working on in class. And if we were in class right now, that's what we'd be working on. I hope you're all well, and I miss you all dearly. Today, I'm going to read to you Tom Thumb. Look at that dude. He reminds me of a character out of a couple other stories, like Lord of the Rings, or like Odd and the Frost Giants, maybe, or some Nordic myths. Tom Thumb. The court of great King Arthur, who lived, as we all know, when knights were bold and ladies were fair indeed, one of the most famous men was the wizard Merlin. Never before or since was there such a wizard. All that is known of wizardry he knew, and his advice was always good and kindly. One day Merlin was traveling disguised as a beggar when he happened upon the house of an honest farmer and his wife, who, after giving him a hearty welcome, cheerfully offered him a big wooden bowl of fresh milk and some coarse brown bread on a wooden platter. And although the man and the woman and their little cottage where they lived were neat and tidy, Merlin noticed that neither the husband nor the wife seemed very happy. When he asked them why, they said it was because they had no children. "If I only had a son, even if he were no bigger than my good man's thumb," said the poor woman, "we'd be quite content." Now this idea of a boy no bigger than a man's thumb so tickled the wizard Merlin's fancy that he promised the man and his wife right away that such a son should come in due time to bring the good couple much happiness. And then he went off at once to pay a visit to the Queen of the Fairies, as Merlin felt that the little people would be best able to carry out his promise. And sure enough, the very idea of a little man who was no bigger than his father's thumb tickled the Fairy Queen too. And she set about the task at once, and soon the good couple was blessed with the tiniest of little boys. His parents were now very happy, and the christening of the little fellow took place with great ceremony. The Fairy Queen attended by her company of elves and was present at the feast. She kissed the little child, giving him the name Tom Thumb, and told her fairies to fetch the tailors of her court, who dressed the little godson exactly as she asked. His hat was made of a beautiful oak leaf, and his shirt was of a fine spider's web, and his leggings and jacket were made of thistledown. His stockings were made with the rind of a delicate green apple, and the garters were of the 2 finest little imaginable hairs plucked from his mother's eyebrows, and his shoes were made from the skin of a little mouse. When he was dressed in his new clothes, the Fairy Queen kissed him once more, and wishing them all good luck, flew off with all the fairies of her court. Stockings are an old name for socks. And garters are the old name for the strings or the bands that would hold the socks up before they had stretchy cloth, because they used to just make tubes and they'd slide right down to your ankles. So you had to wear garters. As Tom grew older, he became very amusing and full of tricks, and so his mother was afraid to let him out of her sight. One day, while she was making a batter pudding, Tom stood on the edge of the bowl with a lit candle in his hand so that he might see that the pudding was properly made. Unfortunately, when her back was turned, Tom fell into the bowl, and his mother didn't even notice and stirred him into the pudding. Then she tied the bowl in a cloth and put it in a pot of boiling water. The batter filled Tom's mouth and prevented him from calling out, but he had no sooner felt the hot water than he kicked and struggled so much that the pudding jumped about in the pot. His mother, thinking that the pudding was bewitched, and was nearly frightened out of her wits, and she pulled the bowl out of the pot and ran with it to her door, and gave it to her tinker, who was passing by. There's a picture of the Fairy Queen, I believe, kissing Tom Thumb in his fancy new clothes. And there's the couple. They do look kind of happy, don't they? And it looks like there's some magic afoot in that picture. Now, they gave it to a tinker. A tinker was a person, kind of like a repairman, maybe, and they tinkered on things. They would come by and they'd fix all manner of things that needed fixing. And they had little things that they had repaired for sale and stuff also. The tinker was very grateful for the pudding and looked forward to having a dinner better than he had enjoyed in many days, because a lot of times they were kind of almost homeless, the tinkerers. His pleasure did not last for long, for as he was climbing over a fence, he happened to sneeze very hard, and Tom, who had been quite quiet inside the pudding for some time, called out at the top of his little voice, "Bless you!" This so terrified the tinker that he flung the pudding down and ran off as fast as he could. The bowl was broken into pieces, and Tom crept out, covered with batter, and he ran home to his mother, who had been looking everywhere for him and was delighted to see him. She gave him a bath in a cup, which soon washed off all the pudding, and he was none the worse for his adventure. There he is, getting a bath in a teacup. It's kind of fun. A few days later, Tom and his mother went to the fields to milk the cows, and fearing that Tom might be blown away by the wind, his mother tied him to a sow thistle with a little piece of thread. While she was milking, a cow came by and bit off the thistle and the thread, and Tom, poor Tom, did not like the cow's big teeth, and he called out loudly, "Mother, mother!" "But where are you, Tommy, my dear Tommy?" cried his worried mother, wringing her hands. "Here, mother," Tom shouted, "inside the cow's red mouth." And saying that, Tom began to kick and scratch until the poor cow was nearly mad, and he finally tumbled out of her mouth. His mother rushed over to him and caught him in her arms and carried him safely home. Some days later, Tom's father took him to plow the fields and gave him a whip made of barley straw with which to drive the oxen. But little Tom was soon lost in a furrow. A furrow is like, when you're pulling a plow in the farmer's field, it makes those grooves that they plant the seeds in. That's called a furrow. So he was lost in one of those furrows. And as usual, birds followed the plow that morning looking for freshly unearthed grubs or any other tiny creatures to eat for breakfast. Well, one happened to be a nearsighted hawk who mistaked Tom for a plump toad and seized him and flew away with him over the treetops. It was only after Tom cried out that the bird realized his mistake, and having no interest in making a meal of a boy, he let Tom fall. Below, a giant was getting some air on the roof of his castle tower when Tom landed right on his head. The giant raised his great hand expecting to catch a pesky fly, but finding something that smelled like a human and smelled like human flesh, one of his favorite meals, he simply dropped poor Tom into his mouth like a piece of candy. Now that's a crazy picture. You can see the hawk dropping Tom, and he lands on that grumpy old giant's head, who says, smells like a dude. I'm going to eat him. Popped him into his mouth. In a moment, the giant was sorry that he tried to make a snack of the little human, because Tom kicked and scratched more wildly than he had in the cow's mouth. With a mighty spit, the giant sent him flying again, through the air, over the battlements, and down to the sea. No sooner had he hit the water, a big fish swallowed him up. This very well may have been the end of Tom Thumb, but a nearby fisherman caught the great fish and took him to the royal kitchen. You can see far below there is a fisherman fishing right below the scary giant's castle. I would probably pick another place to fish. Imagine the cook's astonishment when, upon opening the fish, out jumped little Tom Thumb. Soon, Tom had the whole kitchen staff laughing wildly at his jokes and his pranks. And what is more, is he soon became a favorite of the whole court. When the king went out riding, Tom sat in the pocket of his waistcoat, which is like a vest, like I wear, ready to amuse the lords and ladies and the king and queen and all the great knights of the Round Table. Soon, though. Tom began to miss his parents and begged that the king to allow him to go home for a short time. The king readily agreed and told Tom that he could take with him as much money as he could carry, which probably isn't that much. Here he is entertaining everybody with his tricks and wiles. And then there's a knight, Sir Yellow of the purple cloak. Now, I don't think Tom could carry much money, particularly gold, which is super heavy, so I don't know what he's going to do. Tom had to rest more than 100 times along the way, but after 2 days and 2 nights, he reached his father's house in safety, and his mother ran to meet him, and there was great rejoicing at his arrival. He spent 3 days at home, and they were all very happy, and then once more he set out for the castle. One day, shortly after his return, Tom displeased the king, and fearing the royal anger, he crept into an empty flower pot, and he lay there for a long time. At last, Tom ventured to peep out, and seeing a fine large butterfly on the ground nearby, he climbed out of his hiding place and jumped on its back and was carried into the air. The king and the nobles all tried to catch him, but at last poor Tom fell from his seat right into the watering pot, in which he almost drowned. Luckily, the gardener's child saw him and pulled him out, and the king was so pleased to have Tom safe once more that he forgot to scold him and made much of him instead. That means gave him a lot of praise and was like, dude, I'm so glad you're alive. As a token of his fondness for the mischievous Tom, the king ordered the court tailor to make a wonderful little suit of clothes, and the royal harness maker to make a tiny saddle and a bridle that transformed a castle mouse into a miniature charger. And so, with a needle from the queen's own sewing basket for his sword, Tom's Thumb set forth on a quest of another adventure. Afterwards, Tom lived many years at the castle and became one of the best beloveds of King Arthur's knights. So he actually became a knight. And there he is in his cool little mouse as a charger, and his little saddle, and his needle for a sword. Now this story kind of reminds me a little bit of Fortunately, Unfortunately, Snip, Snap, Snout. That story's all told out. Because, it'd be like, fortunately, he had a whip and was helping his father. Unfortunately, he fell into a furrow. That kind of thing. Back and forth. I would like you to write something about that. Remember, I want you to write what you liked most about that story and reasons why you liked it. You could also write what you didn't like about that story, but you have to have reasons, and the reasons can't be just because. I have a word problem for us. Let's see if I can do this. Let's see. Sasha wants several different color plates for her birthday. She wants 96 yellow plates, 144 silver plates, and some black plates. Sasha wants 324 plates. So how many black plates should she get? Go ahead and read that problem. I want you to solve that too and show your parents how you solved it and what your thinking was. Below that word problem is one of our mystery problems, x plus 11 minus 18 plus 16 equals 26. X equals question mark. In my next video, I'm going to solve both these problems and give you 2 more, maybe 3 more, but I'd like you to have your answers with you. You can always pause the video to read this more slowly. Kids, I miss you a lot, and my life is different without you in it 4 days a week. And I was really looking forward to seeing you after spring break, and now look, here we are. And I don't know when we will see each other. It might be a little bit longer than another week. Hopefully not, but it might be. Stay safe with your families, wash your hands, be nice to your brothers and sisters, be nice to yourself. Mr. Dave loves you.